Alrighty, and good afternoon, KLND listeners. And I want to welcome to our airways. We've been sitting here listening. Jonathan Okute Maza and Harry Little Thunder. Thank you for being so patient and listening. And um, we are now ready to take over the show. And our topic was Standing Up as a Nation, Part 2. And I just think that this was meant to be us to hear what the council is doing and for everyone to hear what's going on. I think a lot of this is going on amongst our people. Um, we only get to hear what we hear. So before we begin, Harry, are you still there? Jonathan?
I'm here. Sure. Do you want me to
Yeah,
wait
let's
for
start the
Harry?
discussion. No, let's get rolling. My mind is going crazy to thinking what your mind is going through. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, first of all, as always, it's an honor to be on speaking on our community issues on our treaty territory. Where I think that video that we posted was talking about anti-Indian policy and how often we don't talk about that. We speak on treaties, and I generalize the generalized state of all of our treaty nations in the United States, but when it comes down to it, Ochete Sakowin territory is ground zero for the continued genocide. And we see that in the policies and the statistics, which I'll go over. But, like I said, we always hear about treaties, and our council invokes them without, or they should know, but maybe they don't, without knowing the red tape that's around them that hinders those treaty rights because they are there, but they're wrapped up. And that started with the 1851 and 1871 Indian Appropriations Act. And that had that impact on our rights where that was the creation of the reservations. It restricted our rights with the hunting, fishing, gathering our food. That introduced the rationing system, the wheat, the grease, the sugar, and now that's where we get, the fried bread and that started the domino effect of diabetes, heart disease, obesity in our communities, which are top contributors to our death rate today in 2025 still. So the act also undermined our sovereignty by shifting us as treaty-based negotiating nations to a trust system that provided funds without recognizing our sovereignty. So that's what we get from the Bureau of Indian Affairs now and the Department of the Interior. But basically that weakened our tribal autonomy. So our finances, they're all through that condition of accepting these colonial policies, these assimilation policies. And then we can, yeah, like I said, we can see that today still. This act also effectively paved the way for all these further laws up to today, declaring that we were no longer considered members of sovereign nations. And the government uh, can't make treaties with us anymore, and we can't make treaties with them. And that should tell us all we need to know about our status. And that rolled then into the Dawes Act, 1887, which was to continue to assimilate us into the mainstream culture. It divided our tribal lands, allotted them to individuals, and the remaining were sold to non-native settlers. And that was reaffirmed in the Indian Act of 1889, where Grover Cleveland, which he was always trying to do, but he officially opened the unassigned land to native settlers under tenets of the Homestead Act. So the next act we often celebrate as a community, which once we look into it, once we are educated on it, we won't. But that's the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924, and that's the government's. You know, they were motivated there to replace tribal citizenship with U.S. citizenship, so they could basically terminate tribes and treaties. Now, and we resisted that. Obviously, we have now a dual citizens status in the United States, and same with Canada, the Canadian natives. But that brings us to the Indian Reorganization Act, and that's the structure that we're under now, and that's the basis of federal legislation of all our affairs. It broke up communal lands into privately owned plots. It forced tribes to creating a constitution that could be recognized by the federal government. They didn't want us to have those traditional councils. So they forced us to create constitutions that reflect their own, which now, as we see, the Constitution often fails to protect their own people. It protects the wrong people, and it breeds corruption, mismanagement. And so while all this was happening, our people are being abused and they want justice, accountability, and compensation. So we're met with the Indian Claims Commission Act. And that law established the Indian Claims Commission to resolve specific tribal claims against the United States. And there were 200 claims, which is unbelievable. There was definitely more that were filed, and only 29 received awards there. So once again, an act of Congress that was, an act of really inaction and just trying to silence the remaining people who were, just trying to receive that justice that we have never received. So then, like the United States does, they have to throw us a bone again, and that's what we got with the Indian Civil Rights Act of 1868. That's another thing we celebrate because we don't know the hold it took on our true inherent rights to this land and self-determination. This act permitted federal judges to overrule decisions made by tribal officials in the administrations of tribal governments. Since then, tribes have made agreements with the federal government, like the Self-Determination Act, where, the government gives them a little bit more power, but still we're working in the outline of the federal government. And then we get, like I said, the Indian Self-Determination Act, the Education Assistance Act, the Indian Child Welfare Act, and others since then. And they're all examples of the red tape policy that hinders our rights to traditional education, language, land, and rights. And those are the basic foundational needs for a traditional future as Ochete Shakowin and all indigenous nations. So, all of these acts of Congress, and we're still at the bottom of every social, health, and economic indicator. So to me, that indicates these policies, these programs, they're not working. We need to put the rights of our people back into the hands of the people. So right now, as Cheyenne River Sioux and, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe reflects this, our poverty rate in 2010, we'll just go back to 2010 but this reflects all the way back to when they were even, studying this and taking these numbers down. But in 2010, our poverty rate was 34.7%. And today, the numbers are always a little different, but it's 35.59%. So you can see that nothing has changed in 15 years. Our suicide is the seventh leading cause of death for our people in our community. Teen suicide is 3 times the national average. We have the lowest life expectancies at 48 years old. Unemployment is 80%. That reflects on all reservations, even the ones with casinos. And right now we're paying $7.50 around or more for the same basket of food that the average American consumer gets, which is obviously an issue when we also have the highest poverty rates. And those rates, they fluctuate with the season. So we're in a unique position where we can't afford these generic policies to rule our people. And we can't afford our councils to not speak up anymore on these issues, because this is the end. We're nearing the end of our road if we don't do something soon. In reality, councils should have congressional and judicial representatives whose focus is accountability in Washington. That should be their job, where they are always in contact with congressional leaders, state, local leaders, federal leaders. They should be in state and federal Congress demanding action from the BIA, from the Department of the Interior. So far we've we've heard a lot and we've seen nothing. And I think that's why for me personally, education is the most important thing. And once we're educated, we get people in to council, or we have the council members who are in now to to see these policies and understand that we have to do something different. And I'll let you speak now and talk about that. But and then we can talk about, maybe if you want to talk about the council meeting or anything like that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. For those of you who just tuned in, this is the Oyate Wash Agya program. And we were listening to the tribal council meeting all the while we were sitting here. And it's kind of strange because the council usually meets the first Wednesday of the month. So they kind of pushed their meeting to today, but that's here nor there. But what I want to share with you, with the listeners, is learning, teaching, and understanding. That's what we need to do. And Jonathan is a young man, and he has taken that time to teach, learn, and understand. And when we start learning and understanding, we can strategize more effectively on what's really happening. We played his video at the beginning at 10 o'clock, and I really think that was profound because he set out some facts that we need to understand. If we don't do anything, folks, we are going to be heading into genocide. If you don't know what genocide is, it's the elimination of a race. It's elimination of a people. It's elimination of who we are. So this change needs to happen. And we don't need to be afraid. We're the ones that put these elected officials in these offices. And I think that they need to stand up as a nation, stand up and learn more and quit hiding behind those policies and procedures. It's just sickening and tiring.